I placed the last item that belonged to me, a pot of orchids I had nurtured for 5 years but which had never bloomed, gently in the corner of the moving company's cargo box. Looking back, the 500 square meter villa, which had once held countless expectations for me and ultimately my heartbreak, now stood empty, with only the polished floors and walls reflecting hollow echoes. The property manager stood respectfully behind me. I handed him the last document folder, containing the new property deed and a supplementary agreement. "I'll leave the rest to you," I said. The moving company's truck slowly drove out of the residential gate, stirring up a few early autumn leaves. I didn't leave immediately. Instead, I stood outside the garden fence, which had once been filled with roses but now held only freshly turned soil, quietly gazing at the house. Property manager Wang rubbed his hands together, wearing a professional smile tinged with a hint of barely noticeable sympathy. "Mrs. Liu, AB, Miss Chin, all the procedures have been completed for the new owner. They'll officially take over next Monday. Rest assured, we will strictly adhere to the confidentiality agreement. No one will be allowed inside before the handover, except for routine inspections." I nodded, took a thin, unsealed envelope from my handbag, and handed it to him. "Please place this on the coffee table in the living room before the new owner takes over. It's a memento for the previous homeowner." Manager Wang took it, catching a glimpse of the gilded words "divorce certificate" peeking out from the envelope's opening. His hand trembled imperceptibly, and his smile grew more cautious. "Of course, I'll take care of it, thank you." I took one last look at the large floor-to-ceiling window in the master bedroom on the second floor. How many nights had I stood alone by that window, watching the driveway below, hoping to see headlights turn on, only to draw the curtains in disappointment at dawn. 5 years was enough. I didn't drive. The white sports car Lu Sikhen had casually bought for me had been transferred to one of his distant cousins yesterday. I hailed a taxi. The driver was quite talkative. "Miss, this neighborhood is really impressive. Did you used to live here?" I rolled down the window, letting the cool breeze brush against my face. "Not anymore." "Oh, so you've moved to a better place, I suppose." The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. I smiled but didn't answer, turning my gaze to the fleeting scenery outside the window. A better place, perhaps, but at least it was a place where I could breathe freely. My phone vibrated in my pocket, displaying a number I hadn't saved but knew by heart. Lu Sichen's mother, Lu Milan. I muted it directly, letting it light up and go dark 3 times before it finally fell silent. Shortly after, a message popped up, its tone as domineering as ever. "Chin Nyan, Sikhen said he's bringing an important guest home today. Have you prepared the bird's nest and tidied the guest room? Don't embarrass our Lu family. Call me back as soon as you see this." An important guest, Xu Yangran. Perhaps. I could almost imagine the expression on Lu Meilan's face when she found out Xu Yangran was pregnant. It might even be slightly better than the one she reserved for me, her legitimate daughter-in-law. After all, Xu Yangran was carrying the golden grandson she had been longing for all these years. Unfortunately, her son wouldn't be able to bring that golden grandson and his mother into this house today. I didn't reply. I deleted the message and blocked the number. My movements smooth and without hesitation, the taxi stopped outside a quiet cafe in the city center. My best friend, Ju Yuran, was already sitting by the window, waving at me. I walked in, and he immediately grabbed my hand, looking me up and down. Everything was taken care of. He didn't notice, did he? The marital home was cleared out, the documents were left behind, and the little surprises regarding the several properties under his name and some of the liquid assets were ready. Lawyer Chen was also prepared. Everything was set, just waiting for the trigger. I stirred the latte in my cup, my tone as calm as if discussing the weather. As for him, at this time, he was probably accompanying Xu Yangran for her prenatal checkup, or maybe on his way to buy a gift to bring home. Ju Yuran widened her eyes and lowered her voice. "Nian Nian, are you really leaving just like that? 5 years of marriage. Lu Sikhen treated you like that, and that old woman from the Lu family was even worse. Are you just going to let them off so easily?" I smiled softly, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. "Yuran, do you know what the cruelest revenge is? It's not tearing each other apart in a loud argument, nor is it crying and begging for him to come back. It's when you've exhausted all my passion, expectations, and patience, and when I decide to leave, I can't even be bothered to say goodbye." It's taking away the things he cares about most, his pride, his assets, and the situation he thought he had under control right when he's feeling most triumphant. I don't want him to feel anger. I want him to experience complete loss of control and incomprehension. Ju Yuran looked at me and sighed after a long moment. You've changed, Nyen Nyen, but it's a good change. Before, you only had eyes for him, and it was heartbreaking. Now, she paused, her eyes shining. Though it's a bit cold, it's really cool. I raised my coffee cup and clinked it with hers. Thank you, and thank you for helping me secretly gather all that evidence over the years and for contacting Lawyer Chen. Don't mention it, Ju Yuran waved her hand dismissively. By the way, your flight is tonight, right? Is everything arranged for your accommodation? Yes, the flight is at 11 p.m. I've arranged a place to stay, a small coastal town. Quiet, I'll settle in for a while. William has a few projects I can look into. No rush. William Chen was a Chinese-American investor I met online years ago, both a mentor and a friend. During this time when I was completely disillusioned with my marriage and secretly planning my exit, he provided a lot of practical advice and resources. We talked about future plans, and time flew by. As the sun set, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was an encrypted email from Lawyer Chen. With just a few brief words, everything is ready. The kite string is firmly in hand. I replied, received, released the string as planned in 24 hours, and turned off my phone. I looked out the window at the gradually brightening neon lights. This city was big and bustling, and once I thought I could make a home here. Now, I was leaving, and at this moment, Lu Sikhen was probably driving Xu Yangran in high spirits toward the villa he thought would forever symbolize success and family. Was he still thinking about how to subtly show Xu Yangran the authority and generosity of the master of the house? Was he rehearsing in his mind how to face the imagined haggard questioning or pitiful pleading from me? I really wanted to see the expression on his face when he opened the door with his key and was met with an empty house and that glaring divorce certificate. That would surely be more captivating than the city's night view. Lu Sikhen was indeed in a good mood. He held the steering wheel with one hand and gently covered the back of Xu Yanran's hand resting on her lap with the other. Xu Yangran stroked her still flat belly, her voice dripping with sweetness. Sikhen, is this really okay? Will sister be upset? She cautiously observed Lu Sichen's expression. A faint, indifferent smile curled at the corner of Lu Sichen's mouth as he gazed ahead, his tone carrying an undeniable sense of control. What's there to be unhappy about? That's my house, and you're carrying my child. The eldest grandson of the Lu family naturally deserves to live in the best environment. Don't worry about Qin Yan. He had specifically cancelled an important meeting today to accompany Xu Yangran for her prenatal checkup. Hearing the doctor say that the fetus was developing well lifted his spirits even more. His mother, Lu Mailan, had long complained about Qin Yan's failure to conceive in 5 years. Now that Xu Yangran was pregnant, it felt like a blessing from heaven. Taking Xu Yangran back to the villa was both to reassure her and to announce his decision and authority to his mother, and even to the increasingly silent Qin Yan. However, Xu Yangran seemed to want to say something more, but Lu Sikhen cut her off. No buts, he said, patting her hand. Yangran, you just need to focus on resting and giving me a healthy son. I'll handle everything else. Qin Yan is a sensible person. She knows what to do. Sensible person. Xu Yangran thought with a hint of disdain, but on her face, she wore a smile of dependence and admiration. Okay, I'll listen to you. As the car entered the familiar villa district, Lu Sikhen, in a rare moment of enthusiasm, even pointed out the surrounding environment and property management to Xu Yangran. Looking at the row of magnificent standalone villas before her, the greed and excitement in Xu Yanran's eyes were almost impossible to conceal. This will be mine from now on. That Qin Yan, who has been occupying the position for 5 years without producing an heir, should have been kicked out long ago. The car stopped in front of the villa with its own garden at the deepest part of the area. Lu Sikhen got out first, walked around to the passenger side, and considerately helped Xu Yangran out. This is it, Lu Sikhen said, his tone carrying a hint of barely noticeable pride. He took out the familiar brass key and walked toward the heavy solid wood door. Xu Yangran leaned against him, already imagining herself as the lady of the house hosting afternoon tea in the garden. The key slid into the lock, turned, and clicked, but the sound was off. It wasn't the usual smooth unlocking sound. Instead, it was a hollow, sticky noise. As if the bolt hadn't been properly engaged, Lu Siken frowned and tried again. But the door still wouldn't open. "What's wrong, Siken?" Xu Yangran asked, puzzled. "The lock might be a bit problematic," Lu Siken replied. His face darkening slightly, he pushed the door forcefully, but it didn't budge. He rang the doorbell, expecting to see Qin Yan rushing to open the door, perhaps with a look of slight confusion at being interrupted by his sudden return. He had seen that expression before on the rare occasions he came home early. The doorbell rang for a long time, but inside, there was only dead silence, with no response at all. A faint, almost imperceptible unease suddenly flickered in Lu Sichen's heart. He took out his phone, found Qin Yan's number, and dialed. However, the voice that came through the receiver was cold and mechanical. "Hello, the number you have dialed is powered off, powered off, Qin Yan rarely turned off her phone, his brow furrowed even tighter. "Siken, maybe sister isn't home. Should we wait in the car first?" Xu Yangran tugged at his sleeve. The early autumn wind was growing a bit chilly. Just then, a middle-aged man in a property management uniform walked over from the adjacent patrol path. It was Manager Wang. His face wore a professional smile, but his eyes seemed somewhat evasive. "Mr. Lu, you're back," Lu Siken, as if seeing a savior, immediately said. "Manager Wang, you came just in time. The lock on my door seems to be broken, and my wife might not be home. I can't reach her. Could you please call a locksmith, or use the spare key?" Manager Wang's smile remained unchanged, but his tone was polite yet distant. "Mr. Lu, I'm very sorry. The owner of this house has already changed the locks. We at the property management don't have spare keys for the new locks. The owner has replaced them." Lu Siken didn't react immediately. "I am the owner. When did I ask you to change the locks?" Manager Wang gave a slight bow, but his words were like an ice pick. "Mr. Lu, you might not be aware, but the original owner of this villa, Ms. Qin Yan, completed the property transfer procedures 3 days ago. The owner here has now been changed to a Mr. Ju. The new owner commissioned us to replace all the locks and requested that, before the formal handover, no one is allowed inside without permission, including relatives of the previous owner." "What did you say?" Lu Siken raised his voice sharply, unable to believe his ears. "Transfer. Qin Yan sold the house. Impossible. This is marital property. She has no right to dispose of it alone." "Say that again." Xu Yangran was also stunned, instinctively gripping Lu Sichen's arm tightly. Manager Wang seemed well prepared. He took out copies of several documents from his folder and handed them to Lu Siken. "Mr. Lu, these are copies of the property certificate provided by Ms. Qin Yan, her personal identification, and a notarized copy of an authorization letter for the separate disposition of marital property. It bears your handwritten signature and fingerprint, authorizing Ms. Qin Yan to fully handle this property. The transfer procedures are legal and compliant, with all documents in order. The new owner's property certificate has already been issued." Lu Sai Chen snatched the documents. His fingers turning white from the force, he stared fixedly at the signature at the end of the so-called authorization letter. It was indeed his handwriting, and there was that red fingerprint. When was this? He suddenly remembered about a year ago, Qin Yan had brought a stack of documents for him to sign, saying they were routine procedures needed by the company's shareholders. Among them were some insurance and fund forms. At the time, he was overwhelmed by a major project and signed them all without even looking. Could it have been then? A chill instantly shot from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. "Open the door." Lu Sichen's eyes were slightly red. Having lost his usual composure, he pointed at the main door and shouted at Manager Wang, "I want to go in now. This is my home. Get out of the way." Manager Wang took a step back, still maintaining a polite but firm attitude. "Mr. Lu, please calm down. The legal owner of this house is now Mr. Ju. I have no right to open the door for you. If you force your way in, it would be illegal, and we would have to call the police. Please don't make things difficult for us. Call the police." "Go ahead." Lu Siken, consumed by rage, lifted his foot to kick the door. Siken, don't do this." Xu Yangran, frightened and pale, clung tightly to his arm. "Let's figure out the situation first. Don't act impulsively." His voice brought Lu Siken back to a sliver of rationality, but the fury in his chest and a near-absurd panic only burned hotter. His home was gone, sold by Qin Yan. How dare he? What right did he have? And where was Qin Yan now? Where was she? Lu Siken stared at Manager Wang, panting heavily. Manager Wang shook his head. "Miss Qin left right after completing the handover. We don't know her whereabouts." As if suddenly remembering something, he added, "Oh, right," before leaving. "Miss Qin entrusted us to place this on the living room coffee table before the new owner took possession." He handed over a thin, unsealed envelope. Lu Siken snatched it and pulled out the contents. The first thing to slip out was a brand new card, still smelling of fresh ink, a confirmation letter for a top-tier VIP luxury global travel package from a well-known travel agency. The booker was Qin Yan, with the departure date set for today. Next came something even more glaring. A small booklet with a gilded national emblem on the cover, the 3 bold characters "For Divorce Certificate" seared into his retinas like a red-hot brand. He flipped it open abruptly, in the spouse column. Next to Qin Yan's name, was his own. The registration date was actually a month ago. He had been completely unaware. He remembered that a month ago, Qin Yan had brought him a document to sign, saying it was for some relative back in his hometown who needed to apply for subsistence allowances, requiring a copy of their marriage certificate and a statement of circumstances. She said it needed his signature to confirm their marital status. He had been busy at the time comforting Xu Yangran, who was upset due to morning sickness, and had waved her off impatiently, telling her to handle it herself and sign wherever needed. So that wasn't a statement of circumstances at all, it was a divorce agreement. A surge of rage mingled with feelings of being fooled, betrayed, and a profound loss of control completely shattered Lu Sichen's rationality. "Qin Yan," he let out a low growl, like a wounded beast, and violently hurled the divorce certificate and travel confirmation to the ground, then stomped on them furiously. Xu Yangran was terrified by his ferocious expression, clutching her stomach, her face pale, not daring to utter a word. Manager Wang and a few security guards who had quietly gathered watched in silence as this usually aloof, cold, and authoritative President Lu now raged like a madman on his own former doorstep. After venting for a while, Lu Siken stopped, panting heavily. His eyes bloodshot, he stared at the tightly shut door, at the ground, at the dirted divorce certificate, and at Xu Yangran trembling beside him, her eyes filled with fear and a trace of barely noticeable disappointment. Then he looked at the surrounding property staff, their gazes tinged with hidden sympathy or the air of spectators. An unprecedented sense of humiliation washed over him. He, Lu Siken, the esteemed president of Chunxing Group, had been completely ousted by his own meek, quiet wife, whom he had never paid much mind to in such a humiliating manner. He didn't even have a home anymore. He suddenly turned, grabbed Xu Yanran's arm with such force that she cried out in pain, and spat out a single word through gritted teeth, his face ashen. "Let's go." Without another glance at the villa, he practically dragged Xu Yangran, stumbling, toward his car. The engine roared to life, and the car screeched out of the residential complex, leaving Manager Wang to bend down and pick up the soiled divorce certificate and the crumpled travel confirmation from the ground. Shaking his head, he whispered to the security guard beside him, "Keep these safe, the new owner might want to see them." "Ah, if only I had known it would come to this." A deathly silence filled the car. Xu Yangran rubbed her sore arm, looking at Lu Sichen's profile, which was so dark it seemed to drip with gloom. Her beautiful dream of living in a grand villa was utterly shattered. In its place was a sense of unease and dread. That woman Qin Yan, who seemed so unthreatening, was actually this ruthless. "Siken," she ventured timidly. "Where are we going now?" Lu Siken didn't answer, he just stared fixedly ahead, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. His phone kept vibrating, calls from his mother, from his company assistant, but he didn't want to answer any of them. His mind was consumed by a single thought: find Qin Yan, immediately, right now. He had to ask her face to face what exactly she thought she was doing. How dare she? And where on earth had she hidden herself? Lu Siken didn't return to the apartment he had shared with Xu Yangran. Instead, he drove to another large, high-end apartment in the city center under his name. He occasionally used it for working late or overnight stays. It was more like a luxury hotel suite, cold and devoid of any lived-in feeling. Xu Yangran followed behind him, her high heels clicking crisply yet forlornly on the polished marble floor. She watched as Lu Xikhen yanked off his tie and flung it violently onto the expensive Italian sofa. Then, like a caged beast, he paced back and forth across the spacious living room, his phone clutched so tightly in his hand that his knuckles turned white. "Xikhen, don't be so anxious, have some water." Xu Yangran tried to show her gentle, caring side and went to the kitchen to pour a glass. "Don't bother me," Lu Xikhen snapped without even looking at her, his voice hoarse and irritable. Xu Yanran's hand froze mid-air, and tears of instantly welled up in her eyes. Ever since she became pregnant, Lu Xikhen had been utterly accommodating to her. When had he ever used such a tone? Lu Xikhen had no mind to care about her feelings. His thoughts were in complete disarray: anger, shock, humiliation, and a faint, unacknowledged sense of panic. That woman Qin Yan, who always stayed quietly in the corner, handed him his slippers when he came home, silently brought him midnight snacks when he worked late, and bowed her head in when his mother gave her a hard time, had actually managed to sell the house, get a divorce, and possibly even abscond with funds right under his nose. He forced himself to calm down and began frantically making calls. First, he called his assistant, Xiao Li, find out all of Qin Yan's whereabouts immediately, her bank card and credit card transaction records, airline and hotel reservations, anything you can find. I want a report within half an hour. Also, contact lawyer Chen Chiming and ask him if he knows where Qin Yan is. If he dares to hide anything, tell him to expect a lawyer's letter. On the other end of the line, Assistant Xiao Li listened, terrified, and hurriedly agreed. Next, Lu Xikhen called a few friends he thought Qin Yan might have contacted, including Zhu Yuran. The calls either didn't go through or, when answered, the person on the other end sounded surprised, claiming, whether truthfully or not, that they hadn't been in touch with Qin Yan for a long time and didn't know her recent situation. Lu Xikhen was so angry he nearly threw his phone, frustrated. He tore open the top two buttons of his shirt, his gaze swept over this cold and opulent room, suddenly feeling an unprecedented emptiness. Something was wrong, there must be something wrong. How could Qin Yan have such nerve? Where did he get the ability to handle such complex matters? Those legal documents, he suddenly remembered the separate disposition authorization for marital property and the divorce agreement manager Wang had presented. The signature and fingerprint were his. That couldn't be faked, but when had he signed them? Fragments of memory began to surge uncontrollably. About a year ago, when he had a cold and fever and was resting at home, Qin Yan brought in medicine. He wanted to come in and, incidentally, brought a stack of documents, speaking in a gentle tone, even with a hint of apology. "Xikhen, these are a few family asset documents you asked me to help with earlier. There's also a guarantee statement my mom needs. They all require your personal signature. Look, sign here, and press your fingerprint too." At the time, his head was spinning, and he just found Qin Yan's chatter annoying, wanting to send him away quickly. Without even looking at the content, he scribbled his signature and pressed his fingerprint in the designated spots. Could that authorization have been tucked among those documents, even earlier, about 2 years ago? Qin Yan seemed to have mentioned wanting to learn some legal knowledge, saying it would make handling simple contract clauses for him more convenient. He had even mocked him. "Can you even understand it? Don't mess around, just leave it to the legal department." Later, it seemed Qin Yan really signed up for some online course and would sometimes read in the study at night. At the time, he just thought Qin Yan was making trouble for no reason. And then there were those trivial matters, the password to the home safe, the storage locations of some of his less frequently used personal seals, even the contact information of several important private lawyers. Qin Yan seemed to have always known them, because he had never deliberately hidden them, nor did he see the need. What could a woman who was completely dependent on him and centered around him possibly do with that knowledge? Now, looking back, it all seemed like carefully laid groundwork. Lu Xikhen walked to the liquor cabinet, took out a bottle of strong liquor, and took a large swig directly from the bottle. The burned his throat but couldn't suppress the chill in his heart. Xu Yangran sat far away on the other end of the sofa, not daring to approach, only softly sobbing, trying to evoke pity. But at this moment, Lu Siken was completely immersed in the of betrayal and a blank. His phone rang, it was Xiao Li calling back. Boss Lu, Xiao Li's voice was tense and incredulous. We can't find anything. What do you mean, can't find anything? Lu Siken growled. The commonly under Miss Chen's, no, Mrs. Chen's name have had large sums of money transferred in batches over the past 3 months. Then, through complex multiple transfers. The funds, currently, they're untraceable. Her credit card has no in the past month. There are no flight or train bookings under her ID number in the airline or railway systems. No hotel reservations either. Xiao Li paused, then added, it's as if someone helped erase these traces in advance, or she used other identity information we don't know about. Lu Siqing's heart kept sinking. Where did Qin Yan get such connections and means? What about Lawyer Chen? He asked through gritted teeth. Lawyer Chen Chiming's phone has been busy all the time. I sent someone to his law firm. His assistant said he was on leave today and couldn't be reached, and, Xiao Li hesitated, and Lawyer Chen's firm, it seems to have a long-term legal retainer record for MS. Qin. What? Lu Siqing was almost going crazy. Chen Chiming was one of his private lawyers he had collaborated with for many years, handling many of his personal affairs. When did Qin Yan become his client? Also, Xiao Li braced himself and continued the report, as you instructed. I reviewed some of the asset documents under your personal name that might have been handled by MS. Qin. I found several investments from 3 years ago where the beneficiary and emergency contact were changed to MS. Qin herself, and the prenuptial agreement you signed with MS. Qin. What about the prenuptial agreement? Lu Siqing suddenly remembered that agreement. It was insisted upon by his mother, Lu Mailan, before the marriage, aiming to clarify the ownership of premarital assets and prevent Qin Yan from dividing the Lu family's core assets in the future. At the time, Qin Yan signed it very calmly, and he didn't pay much attention to it. Could there be a problem with that agreement? The terms of that agreement imposed very strict restrictions on MS. Qin, almost leaving him with nothing. But Xiao Li's voice grew lower and lower. But, at the end of the agreement, there is an addendum. It's a handwritten clause added and notarized with signatures from both parties. It states that if, during the marriage, due to significant fault on the part of Party A, you, including but not limited to long-term emotional neglect, cohabitation with others, having children out of wedlock, etc., leading to the breakdown of the marriage, Party B, MS, Qin, has the right to obtain full disposal rights to 3 designated properties under Party A's name, including the Nanshan Villa, as well as the dividend income rights from 5% of the shares of Morningstar Group held by Party A personally, until she remarries. This clause is independent of the main agreement and takes precedence in effect. Lu Siqing felt as if struck by lightning, his phone almost slipping from his hand. Significant fault, long-term emotional neglect, cohabitation with others, having children out of wedlock. The child in Xu Yanran's belly was the most ironclad evidence. He hadn't carefully read the back of that prenuptial agreement back then. His mother said just sign it, so he signed it. Qin Yan didn't raise any objections at the time either, so she was waiting for him here all along. Disposal rights to 3 properties, the Nanshan Villa had already been sold by him, and the dividend income rights from 5% of the shares of Morningstar Group. That was a huge, continuous cash flow. Who drafted that agreement? Who added the addendum? Lu Siqing's voice was hoarse. The main text of the agreement was drafted by the lawyer designated by the old Madame Lu at the time, but based on preliminary comparison, the handwriting of that handwritten addendum, it closely resembles lawyer Chen Chiming's, and the notarization date was 1 week before your wedding. Xiao Li's voice was now almost inaudible. Lu Siqing stood there, his entire body cold. 1 week before the wedding, meaning, long before the marriage, Qin Yan, with Chen Chiming's help, had planted this deadly seed, a bug, and he and his shrewd mother were completely unaware, or rather, they couldn't be bothered to notice. They thought Qin Yan was a dodder vine clinging to the Lu family, someone who would agree to sign anything and couldn't make waves. 5 years, a full 5 years. During those 5 years, he enjoyed Qin Yan's meticulous care, which he took for granted. At the same time, he ignored his emotional needs, tolerated his mother's harsh criticism of him, and in the end, even brought Xu Yangran and the child in her womb before him. He thought he would always be there, gentle, quiet, and at his mercy. It turned out he had been silently watching, calculating, and preparing all along, trading 5 years of endurance and obedience for this fatal blow today. It wasn't anger, it wasn't crying or making a scene, it was a heart-wrenching, lung-stopping strike, a move to pull the rug out from under him. Quietly hollowing out and dismantling the things he cared about most: wealth, face, control. At the peak of his pride, sister, Lu Sikhen slowly sank onto the sofa, the wine bottle in his hand rolling onto the carpet, leaving a dark stain. Xu Yangran watched his face instantly turn ashen, and the unease in her heart reached its peak. She moved closer and timidly asked, "Sikhen, what exactly happened?" That addendum. Lu Sikhen suddenly looked up at Xu Yangran. His eyes bloodshot and filled with a complex emotion that frightened her. If it weren't for this woman and the child in her womb, Qin Yan wouldn't have been able to gather such solid evidence of a major fault. The thought startled even himself. Immediately, a deeper anger and a suffocating frustration with nowhere to vent surged within him. He brushed away Xu Yanran's attempt to touch him, his voice hoarse. "Go back to your room, let me be alone for a while." Xu Yangran bit her lip, tears finally falling, but she didn't dare say another word. She walked toward the guest room, looking back every few steps. Lu Sikhen sat alone in the dimly lit living room, for the first time, recalling the details of these 5 years of marriage so clearly, the silences of Qin Yan that he had ignored, the occasional hesitant looks in his eyes that he had found annoying, the unreasonable demands from his mother that he had borne alone. All of it now turned into sharp needles, densely piercing his perception. He hadn't lost a wife he didn't love, he had lost an opponent who had long set up the chessboard and patiently waited for the right moment. And now, he didn't even know where he was. Over the next 48 hours, Lu Sikhen was like a frenzied trapped beast. He didn't go to the company, pouring all his energy into one thing, finding Qin Yan at any cost. He mobilized all his connections and resources. He sent out 3 waves of private investigators, alerted friends from both sides of the law, and offered sky-high rewards. He demanded a search of all airport and port surveillance footage to trace Qin Yan's departure. He had people investigate Zhu Yuran and all others who might have had contact with Qin Yan, checking their communication records and whereabouts. He even tried to pressure telecommunications companies and banks through his connections to obtain more detailed records. However, the feedback he received time and again plunged him into an even deeper ice cellar. Surveillance footage from the airport and high-speed rail stations showed no clear images of Qin Yanqi using his own ID to pass through customs or board trains during the estimated time frame. The private investigator reported that Zhu Yuran, aside from her regular commute to and from work, had only been going to the gym and meeting up with her close friends. Her movements showed no abnormalities, and her communication records were clean as well. As for the banks and telecommunications companies, any slightly sensitive inquiries were politely but firmly blocked, with the other party citing legal provisions and user privacy protection. Even the connections he had called in were useless. "Mr. Lu," they said, "without a formal investigation order from the judicial authorities, we are not authorized to provide more in-depth information. Moreover, it seems as if someone at a higher level has given instructions to handle matters strictly according to the law." Assistant Xiao Li reported this with cold sweat beading on his forehead. "A higher level? Who?" Lu Sichen's eyes were bloodshot. He had hardly slept at all. "I don't know. But it's definitely not an ordinary figure. Ms. Qin's departure was meticulously planned, and she had professionals helping her cover her tracks," Xiao Li said cautiously. The investigators also mentioned one detail. They tried to track other identities Ms. Qin might have used. They discovered that over the past 2 years, she had made several trips to a certain Southeast Asian country through official channels, citing reasons such as cultural exchanges and short-term meditation retreats. Each trip wasn't long, but it was very regular. That country has no extradition treaty with ours, and its financial regulations are relatively independent. Lu Sikhen slammed his fist onto the heavy rosewood desk, producing a dull, thunderous sound. Southeast Asia, meditation retreats, cultural exchanges. Qin Yan, since when did she develop such interests? She's the type who doesn't even enjoy social gatherings with friends. All of this pointed to one fact: Qin Yan's departure was not a spur-of-the-moment decision but a meticulously planned exit, orchestrated for at least 2 years, if not longer. She had long intended to leave. While he was still immersed in Xu Yanran's tenderness and the pride of soon becoming a father, she had been calmly laying the groundwork, calculating every step. This realization filled him with more fear and anger than mere betrayal. He had been kept in the dark like a clown, all while believing he was in control of everything. Just then, the financial director, Zhu Zhenghua, rushed into his office without even knocking, his face pale. "Mr. Liu, something's happened." Zhu Zhenghua's voice trembled with barely suppressed panic. "What now?" Lu Xichen's nerves were already on edge at the mention of trouble. "It's your personal account, and several of the group's associated accounts used for special project funds." Zhu Zhenghua wiped the sweat from his brow. "Starting early this morning, funds exceeding 8 figures have been frozen one after another. The bank's reason is that they received legal documents for asset preservation from an authorized agency, alleged transfer of marital property and infringement of spousal rights and interests. The funds need to be temporarily frozen pending verification." "What?" Lu Xichen shot to his feet, his vision momentarily darkening. His personal account was frozen, and even the company's associated accounts were affected. "Which bank?" "Contact their president immediately." "I'll go there in person." Lu Xichen hadn't finished speaking when his phone rang. It was another lawyer from his private legal team, Attorney Zhong, calling. He immediately answered and put it on speakerphone. Attorney Zhong's voice was equally grave and urgent. "Mr. Liu, I just received several copies of documents served by the court. They are applications submitted by Attorney Chen Chiming on behalf of MS. Qin Yan, no, MS. Qin, requesting pre-litigation property preservation for some of the assets under your name. The reason is that you have committed significant misconduct during the marriage and have intentionally transferred or concealed marital property, harming her legitimate rights. The application materials are very detailed, including evidence of your relationship with MS, Xu Yangran, MS, Xu's pregnancy test report, photos of you entering and leaving residences together, as well as records of large transfers you made to several overseas accounts over the past year. Those accounts are suspected to be linked to MS, Xu." After a preliminary review, the court deemed the situation urgent and met the conditions for preservation, and has already ruled to freeze the relevant accounts. Lu Xichen felt a rush of blood surge to his head. His ears were ringing. The transfers to overseas accounts, those were preparations he had made to buy property abroad for Xu Yangran and set up a trust fund, using his own private stash. He thought it was done without anyone noticing. How did Qin Yan find out, and even obtain the transfer records? Chen Chiming, it must be Chen Chiming again. Not only did he help Qin Yan with the divorce and selling the property, but he had also been secretly gathering evidence against him. Immediately apply for a reconsideration and raise an objection. That's my personal property and has nothing to do with Qin Yan. Also, hold Chen Chiming accountable for leaking client confidentiality and fabricating evidence. Lu Xichen shouted into the phone. Attorney Zhong fell silent for a moment. His tone strained. "Mr. Liu, the reconsideration is already being prepared, but the situation isn't very optimistic. First, those transfers occurred during the marriage. Unless we can clearly prove that the source of the funds is completely unrelated to marital property, it will be difficult to avoid them being recognized as part of the shared assets. Second, the evidence of your relationship with MS, Xu, and the fact that she is pregnant is solid, which confirms the significant misconduct. Most importantly, Attorney Chen Chiming presented a family financial disclosure consent form that you signed. It states that you authorized MS Qin to inquire about the transaction details of all bank accounts under your name for family financial planning purposes. The signing date was 2 years ago. Lu Xichen opened his mouth, but no sound came out. It seemed there had been such a matter 2 years ago. Qin Yan said she wanted to learn financial management to better handle the family assets. She needed him to sign an authorization to facilitate understanding the overall financial situation. At the time, he thought it didn't matter and even found her a bit meddlesome, so he signed it casually. It turned out that authorization had become his legal imperial sword to track his financial movements. He thought she was just looking, but he never expected she had silently noted every suspicious transfer. And now it had turned into a sharp blade stabbing him. Moreover, Lawyer Zhong's voice dropped even lower. The Chunqing Group had also been notified to suspend the payment of this quarter's shareholder dividends to you personally until the property dispute between you and MS. Qin is clarified. This is also a temporary measure based on the additional clauses of the prenuptial agreement. The dividends have been stopped too. Lu Siken felt suffocated, his personal liquid funds were frozen, and the company dividends were suspended. This meant that although his vast business empire was still operating, his personal cash flow had almost been cut off instantly. It had now become extremely difficult for him to mobilize large sums of money to smooth relationships or intensify the search for Qin Yan. President Lu. Zhu Zhanghua watched as Lu Siken swayed unsteadily and quickly reached out to support him. Lu Siken shook off his hand, leaned on the table, and gasped for breath. Humiliation, anger, and a sense of powerlessness as if being choked from all directions nearly overwhelmed him. The wealth and power he took pride in had proven so vulnerable in the face of Qin Yan's meticulously prepared legal combination. He thought divorce was just about getting rid of an unwanted woman, but he never expected the other party had quietly closed the net, forcing him to pay a painful price. The office door was gently knocked, and the receptionist's trembling voice came through. President Lu, the old madam is here, and Miss Xu is also here. They're making a scene in the downstairs reception room, demanding to see you. Lu Mailan and Xu Yangran, how did they end up together? And making a scene? Lu Xichen's head was spinning, but he couldn't ignore his mother and the pregnant Xu Yangran. Suppressing the turmoil in his chest, he roared at Zhu Zhanghua and Lawyer Zhong. Do everything possible to apply for the freeze to be lifted. Find the best lawyers, no matter the cost. Then, with a grim expression, he walked toward the reception room. He knew an even greater storm was yet to come. When he pushed open the door to the reception room and saw his mother Lu Mailan's livid face and Xu Yanran's tear-streaked, accusatory expression, the veins at his temples throbbed violently. Siken. Lu Mailan was the first to confront him, her tone sharp and severe. What on earth is going on? Why was the house sold? Where has that little bitch Qin Yan run off to? And I just got a call from Mrs. Wang saying court officials went to the bank you frequent to check your accounts. Are you involved in some lawsuit? How embarrassing. Xu Yangran also spoke up between sobs, this time with a mix of grievance and dissatisfaction. Siken, I just tried to buy that necklace I had my eye on earlier, but my card was declined. The bank said there's an issue with the account. Also, the property management is pressing for the service fees on the apartment you rented for me. I called your secretary, and he said the company's finances are tight right now, so you need to handle it personally. But your phone has been unreachable this whole time. Lu Siken looked at the two women in front of him, one pressing for answers, the other making demands, both adding pressure. Meanwhile, the woman who had truly landed him in this situation was far away, carefree and at ease. He felt an unprecedented weariness and irritability, his voice hoarse as he cut them off. The house was sold by Qin Yan. He had planned the divorce long ago. I'm having some financial issues at the moment and am dealing with it. We'll talk about the necklace later. As for the apartment fees, cover them yourself for now. Xu Yanran's eyes widened in disbelief. Where would I get the money to cover it? Didn't all my money go toward preparing for the baby and daily expenses? Siken, you never said anything like this before. Lu Mailan grew anxious too. Financial issues? What kind of issues? Chunqing Group is about to collapse. Siken, don't scare your mother like this. Is this Qin Yan's doing? I always said she was trouble. The reception room was filled with the women's questioning and sobbing. Lu Siken felt his head was about to explode. With painful clarity, he realized that after losing Qin Yan, whose seemingly quiet presence had actually supported all the trivial troubles in his life, his world was crumbling at a visible pace. And this was only the beginning. The sound of the waves had a peculiar rhythm, a gentle, unhurried lapping, like an eternal breath that could easily smooth out the last wrinkle in one's heart. Barefoot, I walked on the soft, cool white sand, letting the slightly salty morning sea breeze brush against my face and lift the hem of my loose linen dress. Where the sea met the sky in the distance, a pale light emerged, gradually warming into shades of orange and gold as a red sun burst forth, turning the vast blue waves into shimmering fragments of gold. This place was completely different from the gloomy, Noisy metropolis back home, time itself seemed to slow down here. I'm renting a 2-story wooden house with a small yard, just a 5-minute walk from the beach. The yard has a tall coconut tree and a small patch of land where I plan to grow some herbs and vegetables. It's simple but full of life. After moving here a week ago, I've already adjusted to the time difference. Every morning, I take a walk along the beach, then head to the small market in town to buy fresh fruit and bread. In the afternoons, I either read on the terrace while handling some remote work sent by William, or follow online tutorials to learn surfing, though for now, I'm still at the stage of paddling around in the shallow water with my surfboard. The phone number that was once known by countless people back home has long been deactivated. Now, I use a local number, known to only a handful: Ju Yuran, lawyer Chen, William, and 2 friendly elderly neighbors I've met here. Everything from back home truly feels like a past life. If it weren't for the occasional text messages or calls from unfamiliar numbers back in Yeyang that popped up as reminders, like right now, as I was using a small trowel to loosen the soil around the newly planted basil seedlings, my phone on the nearby rattan round table vibrated. The screen displayed a long, complex international number with no contact name. I raised an eyebrow, pretty sure I could guess who it was, at this time. It would be afternoon back home, just when certain people, refreshed from their naps, were full of energy and looking for trouble. Unhurriedly, I set down the trowel, took off my gardening gloves, picked up the phone, and pressed the answer button, but didn't immediately bring it to my ear. Sure enough, the next moment, Lou Malan's piercing voice, made even sharper by anger, immediately erupted. Even without the speakerphone on, it was clearly audible. "Qin Yan, you ungrateful, venomous-hearted ingrate, where the hell have you been hiding? How dare you sell my Lu family's house and secretly get a divorce? Who gave you the nerve? Do you have any idea how much you've hurt my son?" The voice sounded particularly jarring in the quiet courtyard, startling 2 small birds that had been preening their feathers on the nearby fence. I held the phone a bit farther away, waiting for this wave of roaring. During a brief pause for breath, I calmly brought it back to my ear and spoke in a flat tone. "Miss Lou, please watch your language. First, only my name is on the property deed for that villa, so I have the right to dispose of it. Second, divorce is a legal act that takes effect with both parties' signatures. There's nothing secretive about it. Third, how your son is doing is none of my business." My calmness clearly infuriated her even more. "Bullshit." Lou Malan's voice twisted with agitation. "That was my son's home. Our Lou family's property. You must have used some underhanded trick to get him to sign, and now Sicheng's accounts are frozen. His company is affected. It's all you're doing, isn't it? You'd better get your ass back here right now, return what's owed, and withdraw all those messy applications. Otherwise, I'll ruin your reputation in this country and make your family too ashamed to show their faces." Mention of my family made my eyes turn cold for a moment. But my tone remained unchanged. "Ms. Lou, legal documents are black and white and legally binding. If you have any objections, you can hire a lawyer and resolve it through legal channels. As for my family, that's none of your concern. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. International calls aren't cheap. You dare hang up on me?" Lou Milan was left speechless with anger. Then, as if seizing on some leverage, her voice took on a malicious, mocking tone. "Qin Yan, don't think running off abroad makes you something special. Let me tell you, Sicheng has already found the best lawyer. Your dirty tricks will soon be exposed, and you won't get a single cent. And Yangran is pregnant with Sicheng's son, the Lu family's eldest grandson. A barren hen like you should have known to step aside long ago. Now you're just resorting to shady schemes. It's truly disgusting." The news of Xu Yanran's pregnancy, delivered from her mouth, carried the triumphant of a victor and utter contempt for me. In the past, it might have hurt, might have shamed me, but now I just found it laughable. Whether Ms. Xu and the child are well is none of my concern. I also wish you the early fulfillment of your wish to hold your grandson. I paused for a moment before adding, "But given your son's current financial situation, I'm not sure if he can still maintain the standard of living that Miss Xu and her future child deserve. Mrs. Lu, you should worry more about them." "What do you mean, Qin Yan? Who are you cursing?" Lu Milan screamed. "Exactly what I said," I replied, too tired to argue further. "Also, Let me remind you that your son's transfer records to Miss Shu's overseas account have been listed as evidence of transferring marital assets. If Miss Shu is smart, she should be thinking about whether that money can still stay safely in her account. Goodbye. With that, I ignored the sudden surge of angry curses and panicked, sharp noises on the other end of the line, hung up, and skillfully dragged the number into the blacklist. The world returned to peace. With only the rustling of coconut leaves in the wind and the distant murmur of the waves, I picked up the watering can and gave the basil seedlings a little water. Feeling even more relaxed than before the call, Lou Malin's reaction was entirely expected. The more frantic she was, the more it proved that Lu Sikhen was having a hard time. In the afternoon, I scheduled a video call with Ju Yuran. It was evening on his end, with the familiar backdrop of his bedroom. Nyan Nyan, he waved excitedly as soon as he saw me. You look great. The seaside climate really suits you. It's all right, mostly just peace of mind. I smiled. How are things over there? Ju Yuran immediately switched to gossip mode, lowering his voice, eyes sparkling. It's absolutely wild. I tell you, Lu Sikhen is in hot water right now. His personal accounts are frozen, and I heard he even delayed the management fees for the high-end apartment he rented for Xu Yangran. The property management has reminded him several times, and Xu Yangran seems to have paid part of it herself. She's been in a foul mood. As for the company, although Chunxing Group has a solid foundation and won't collapse anytime soon, several short-term projects requiring liquidity have been forced to pause or delay. The shareholders are already grumbling. The key is, someone leaked a bit of news about your divorce, his suspected asset transfers, and his affair. Although it hasn't made the mainstream news, it's already spreading in the circle. He's lost a lot of face. I listened quietly. Lawyer Chen would also keep me updated on these matters. But hearing them from Yuran added many vivid details. And that Xu Yangran, Ju Yuran curled his lip. She's really not one to be trifled with. Before, she acted like the future Mrs. Lu, flaunting her pregnancy. Now that Lu Sikhen is having financial issues, she seems panicked. I heard she even went to Chunxing Group to look for Lu Sikhen. I don't know if she was making a scene or what, but she was stopped by the front desk. It was quite an ugly scene. Your ex-mother-in-law, Lu Mailan, is even worse. She's been calling everyone to badmouth you and even tried to cause trouble for your parents. But it seems your parents were already arranged by you to go abroad for a vacation. Well done, I nodded, long before deciding to take action. I had arranged for my parents to join a month-long overseas tour group under the pretext of winning a luxury travel prize, cutting off any direct means for Lu Mailan to harass them. He's still frantically looking for you. Ju Yuran dropped her playful tone, sounding a bit worried. He sent several groups of people to search both domestically and abroad. Nian Nian, are you safe over there? Don't worry, the place William helped arrange is very discreet, using new identity information. This town is quiet, with few outsiders. I keep a low profile and rarely go out, so no one will notice, I reassured her. Besides, the more energy he wastes looking for me, the less time he has to properly handle his own mess. Let him search. You're right, Ju Yuran cheered up again. It's satisfying to think of him running around like a headless fly. Oh, by the way, Lawyer Chen asked me to tell you about the execution of that 5% dividend income right. The first payment has already been transferred to your designated account through an offshore trust channel as per the agreement. The amount is quite substantial. That's good news. That money would be the solid foundation for me to establish myself here and develop my own career. Please thank Lawyer Chen for me. I spoke, and after chatting a bit longer, Ju Yuran said she needed to sleep, so we ended the video call. I walked to the second-floor balcony, lay down in the rocking chair, and watched the sunset slowly sink below the horizon. The sky was dyed a brilliant purplish red, and my phone lay quietly on the small table beside me. I knew Lu Sikhen wouldn't give up searching, and Lu Malin's harassment might not completely stop. Even Xu Yangran might try to contact me someday. But so what? All their anger, resentment, curses, and schemes couldn't penetrate this vast ocean or reach the peace I felt in my heart at this moment. I broke free from a gilded cage not to jump into another conflict. I sold the house, severed ties, and moved far away to find myself and live the life I wanted. Lu Sichen's collapse was the consequence of his own actions, and I merely took back the gift that never should have been his in the first place. The sea breeze was gentle, and the night grew deeper. In the distance, the lights of the small town flickered on one by one, warm and ordinary. This was what life should be like. Loo Sik-hen sat in the spacious leather chair of the CEO's office at Morningstar Group but felt as if he were sitting on pins and needles. Outside the window was the city's bustling skyline, once a symbol of his power and success, but now it only made him feel irritable and a vague sense of losing control. The freeze on his personal funds was like an invisible noose tightening around his neck, while not suffocating him immediately. Every move he made felt constrained and pressured. Even more troublesome were the ripples beginning to surface at the company level. Mr. Liu Jiaofeng, the director of the marketing department, stood in front of the desk with a grave expression. Regarding the Blue Ocean project, Wansheng Group has just formally responded. They stated that due to recent market fluctuations and potential instability among partners, they have decided to postpone signing the final investment agreement and need further evaluation. Evaluate what? Lu Sichen's voice carried suppressed anger. The cooperation framework was finalized long ago, now they're saying they need to postpone. Zhao Feng replied cautiously. Mr. Li from Wansheng privately revealed that some members of their board have concerns about your recent personal situation. They're worried it might affect the project's focus and resource allocation. The words were tactful, but the meaning was clear. You, Lu Sik-hen, are embroiled in a divorce lawsuit, have frozen assets, and are involved in an extramarital affair. Your reputation is tarnished. And they're afraid you might cause trouble. Lu Sik-hen slammed his fist on the armrest. It's Qin Yan again. The chain reaction he had caused was already beginning to erode his business empire. And there's more, Zhao Feng continued, steeling himself. The overseas syndicated loan we previously agreed on, which was supposed to be disbursed this week, the bank representative just called. They said they need additional explanations regarding your personal asset situation and confirmation that your dispute with MS. Qin will not lead to any equity freezes or affect the stability of the group's pledged collateral. The disbursement may be delayed by at least a month. Funds. It's always about funds. The project's progress and loan acquisition were both hindered by the negative impact of his personal issues. Lu Sik-hen felt a wave of dizziness. Morningstar Group was massive. But the larger the machine, the more dependent it was on cash flow. A key project being blocked or an important loan being delayed could trigger a series of chain reactions. Find a way to stabilize Wansheng. Tell them my personal issues will absolutely not affect the company's operations. As for the bank, have the finance and legal departments prepare the materials immediately, meet their requirements, and do it as soon as possible. Lu Sik-hen almost shouted the order. Zhao Feng quickly acknowledged and retreated. The office had just quieted down when the internal phone rang again. The secretary's cautious voice came through. Mr. Liu, MS. Shu is in the reception area on the first floor. She says she must see you urgently. Lu Sichen's temples throbbed. One of the last people he wanted to see right now was Xu Yangran. Since the funding issues arose, Xu Yangran had gradually shifted from cautious comfort to anxiety and complaints. Last time, she even came directly to the company, embarrassing him thoroughly. Let her come up. He rubbed his temples, his tone weary. After all, she was still carrying his child. Not long after, Xu Yangran pushed the door open and entered. Today, she was wearing a dress that accentuated her pregnant belly, with exquisite makeup, but there was an unmistakable anxiety and displeasure hidden between her brows and eyes. Gone was the gentle, water-like demeanor from before. Sik-hen, she said with a sob in her voice as soon as she stepped inside. When exactly can you unfreeze the account? Yesterday, during my prenatal checkup, the doctor said I need to strengthen my nutrition and prescribed a lot of imported supplements. Also, the postpartum care center I booked earlier is pressing for the final payment. My supplementary card won't work at all. What am I supposed to do? It was about money again. Lu Sik-hen tried to be patient. Yangran, I'm a bit tight on cash right now. The company is handling it. I'll have my secretary transfer you cash for the prenatal checkup and supplements first. Can we switch to a more ordinary postpartum care center? Switch. Xu Yanran's voice suddenly rose, her grievance turning into dissatisfaction. That one is the best in the entire city. I've already told all my friends I'm going there. If I switch now, where will my face be? Sik-hen, you didn't say that before. You promised to give me and the baby the best. Lu Siken looked at her face, flushed with agitation, and suddenly felt a sense of unfamiliarity. Before, he had found her delicate, adorable, and in need of protection, but now he only felt noise and endless demands. Face. Lu Siken curled the corner of his mouth into a hint of sarcasm. What face do I have left now? My face has long been trampled underfoot, and who is all this because of? If it weren't for you, he abruptly stopped himself. But the chill in his eyes and the unspoken words made Xu Yanran's face instantly pale. Because of me, Xu Yanran's tears fell, this time carrying genuine panic and grievance. Siken, what do you mean? Did I force you to divorce Qin Yan? Did I make you sign those documents? The child is yours. You were the one who said you'd give us a home. Now that there's a problem, you're blaming me. The more she spoke, the more heartbroken she became, and the more reckless her words grew. I get it. Are you regretting it now? Do you think Qin Yan was better after all? She was so capable, leading you around by the nose and even taking your money. What do I have? I only have you and the child. Now you can't even provide us with basic living security, and you're blaming me. Shut up, Lu Siken growled, the veins on his forehead throbbing. Xu Yanran's words stabbed at his most painful spot like a knife. Regret? No, he would never admit it. But it was undeniable that Qin Yan's capability and Xu Yanran's current helpless demands formed a glaring contrast, making him even more furious. The atmosphere in the office froze to an icy standstill. Just then, Lu Sichen's phone vibrated. It was his mother, Lu Mailan, calling. He took a deep breath and walked to the window to answer. Siken, come home right away. Lu Mailan's voice was urgent, anxious, and flustered. Is Yangran with you? Tell her to come back with you. What's happened now? Lu Siken now reflexively gets a headache whenever he hears about trouble. Just now, two people claiming to be from the court's enforcement bureau came to the house. Lu Mailan's voice was filled with panic and lingering fear. They delivered some kind of notice of assistance in enforcement, saying that bitch Qin Yan applied for compulsory enforcement to recover the money you transferred to Yangran, and they also mentioned something about investigating Yanran's assets. They completely confused me. What on earth is going on? Siken, didn't you say everything was handled? Lu Sichen's heart sank heavily. Chen Qiming moved so fast. The court had already initiated enforcement proceedings and even went directly to his mother. He abruptly looked at Xu Yangran. Xu Yangran seemed to have guessed something from Lu Sichen's grim expression and fragmented words. Her face turned even paler, her hands instinctively protected her stomach, and her eyes were filled with fear. Mom, don't panic, I'm coming back right away. Lu Siken hung up the phone, his face so dark it seemed to drip water. He looked at Xu Yangran, his tone icy. You heard it all. The court people came looking, wanting to investigate the assets under your name, especially overseas accounts. I don't have any. Xu Yangran shook her head in panic. That money was what you voluntarily gave me. It's our shared property. Why should Qin Yan recover it? Voluntarily, shared property. Lu Siken sneered. In court, that's called a unilateral gift during marriage or the transfer of marital property. Qin Yan has the authorization letter, the transfer records, the evidence is solid, and you're not even my legal wife yet. Xu Yangran felt as if struck by lightning. Her legs went weak, and she almost collapsed to the ground. She had always thought that being pregnant meant she held all the cards. That money and those gifts were what she deserved, but now Qin Yan actually wanted to snatch the money back from her. Wouldn't that mean she'd end up with nothing? Siken, you have to save me. She rushed over and grabbed Lu Sichen's arm. This time, she was truly scared. I can't lose that money. It's for the baby. Qin Yan is too ruthless. You can't let her succeed. Lu Siken shook off her hand, looking at her with a complex expression. She can hardly protect herself now. Qin Yan's move wasn't just about making him penniless, it was about making him lose everyone, even turning Xu Yangran, whom he once thought was a gentle refuge, into trouble and a burden. He suddenly remembered how, in the past, when the company encountered tricky legal issues or difficult opponents, Qin Yan always seemed to find solutions through some inconspicuous connections or meticulous paperwork. She was like a silent barrier behind him, shielding him from many trivial yet troublesome disturbances, and he had never cherished it. He even took it for granted. Now that the barrier was gone, all the disturbances and storms were hitting him directly in the face. Let's go home first. Lu Xichen's voice carried an endless weariness and chill. He no longer looked at Xu Yanran's deathly pale face, grabbed his suit jacket, and strode toward the door first. Xu Yangran stumbled after him, her mind in complete chaos. The money might be gone. The court was investigating. Lu Xichen's attitude was growing colder and colder. She touched her lower abdomen, feeling for the first time a flicker of uncertain panic toward this child who had once brought boundless hope. Meanwhile, Lu Xichen was thinking that he had to resolve everything Qin Yan had brought about as quickly as possible. He could no longer sit idly by. No matter the method, he had to find her, make her withdraw the lawsuit, make her spit out everything she had swallowed. A nearly insane thought began to take root in his heart. He still had one last card to play, a card he had previously disdained but now had to consider. Lu Xichen's last card was a Chinese community leader he had befriended in his early years, now a man of considerable influence in an overseas country. His surname was Dong, and Mr. Dong's business dealings were varied, his connections broad, spanning all walks of life. Lu Xichen had once helped him with a matter of moderate importance. And a favor was owed. When the call connected, Lu Xichen didn't waste words. He directly named his price. As long as Mr. Dong could help him find Qin Yan's exact whereabouts, the reward would be substantial, and the previous favor would be considered settled. Furthermore, Chunqing Group's overseas business in the future could prioritize Mr. Dong's connections. On the other end of the line, Mr. Dong pondered for a moment before saying, "I'll try, no guarantees." Then he hung up. Lu Xichen waited anxiously for 2 days. During these 2 days, the court's investigation into Xu Yanran's assets seemed to have progressed further. Xu Yangran was almost in tears every day, trying every possible way to find out if he had any private savings left to move. His mother, Lu Mailan, kept up the pressure, cursing Qin Yan one moment and blaming him the next for his incompetence. Can't even handle a woman. At the company, the Wansheng project was deadlocked, the bank loan was delayed, and the atmosphere at the shareholders' meeting had also become noticeably tense. Just as Lu Xichen was nearly driven to despair and ready to seek other methods, Mr. Dong's email arrived. The content was brief. Just an address, the name of a coastal town in a certain country, and the name of a prestigious local private hospital. Attached was a somewhat blurry side profile photo. The background was the hospital garden, where an Asian woman in a beige trench coat, her hair tied up, was looking down at some documents in her hand. Although her full face wasn't clear, Lu Xichen recognized her at a glance. It was Qin Yan. Was she at the hospital because she was sick? His heart inexplicably tightened for a moment, only to be quickly replaced by even greater anger. She was actually living there, seemingly quite peacefully. The email ended with an additional note. This Friday evening, there would be a charity banquet in the town hosted by the local Chinese Chamber of Commerce. The organizer was Qin Partners Consulting, and the person in charge was William Chen. According to reliable information, Ms. Qin Yan might attend as William Chen's guest. Location: Banquet Hall, Coastal Sapphire Hotel, William Chen, Chen Partners. Lu Xichen immediately had his assistant investigate, and the feedback came quickly. William Chen was a senior advisor who had recently emerged in the overseas Chinese investment circle, with a profound background and a low-key style. He wielded considerable influence, specializing in providing cross-border investment and asset management services for high-net-worth clients and family offices. His company was one of the channels through which Qin Yan's funds from the sale of the villa ultimately flowed. Everything matched up. Qin Yan had indeed climbed to a higher branch. This realization fueled Lu Xichen's rage to its peak, mingled with the stinging pain of a wounded male ego, feeling utterly outmatched. Without hesitation, he immediately booked the fastest flight to that country. He was going to that damned dinner party. He was going to drag Qin Yan out in front of that William Chen, in front of all the overseas Chinese business people. He was going to make her understand the price of betraying and scheming against him. He was going to bring her back to China, make her withdraw the lawsuit, and restore everything to how it was. He didn't even tell Xu Yangran or his mother about his specific itinerary, only saying he was going abroad to handle urgent business. On Friday evening, Lu Xichen arrived at the coastal town, weary from his journey. He checked directly into the Sapphire Hotel and changed into the most expensive custom-made suit he had brought with him. As he adjusted his tie in the mirror, his eyes were bloodshot, but more than that, they held a ruthless determination, a readiness to burn his bridges. The dinner started at 7 p.m. Lu Sik-hen didn't have an invitation, but he used another name and identity provided by Mr. Dong to register for temporary entry as a potential investor from China. The hotel banquet hall was brilliantly lit, filled with elegantly dressed guests, the air flowing with soft jazz and the murmur of conversation and laughter. Most of the attendees were local Chinese business elites, with some Western faces among them, holding a glass of champagne. Lu Sik-hen scanned the crowd with hawk-like eyes. His presence drew sidelong glances from some, as he was a new face, and his aura was sharp and intense, somewhat out of place in the relatively relaxed atmosphere. He searched for a while but didn't see Qin Yan. Nor did he see the William from the photo in the dossier, Chen. Just as he was growing increasingly agitated, a slight stir came from the entrance of the banquet hall. Lu Sik-hen looked up, and his pupils constricted sharply. Qin Yan had arrived. She was wearing a minimalist pearl-white silk gown, her long hair elegantly swept up, revealing her slender neck and the clear lines of her collarbone. Her face bore appropriate light makeup, and a faint, serene, and composed smile played on her lips. On her arm was a man who appeared to be in his 40s, debonair, wearing gold-rimmed glasses. The Chinese man was none other than William Chen. As soon as they appeared, several people immediately went up to greet them. William Chen smiled as he conversed with others. Qin Yan stood quietly by his side, occasionally nodding or speaking a word or two softly, her demeanor poised and graceful. She was a completely different woman from the one Lu Sik-hen remembered, who was always silent, reserved, and even somewhat timid at family gatherings. A surge of hot blood rushed to Lu Sik-hen's head. He saw that serene, carefree smile on her face, saw the natural, trusting posture she had with William Chen, saw the respectful attitude of the people around her. All of it felt like poison-tipped needles, viciously piercing his eyes and heart. He could no longer restrain himself. Pushing aside two people conversing in front of him, he strode purposefully in that direction. His movement was not subtle, causing several nearby to turn and look. Qin Yan seemed to sense something as well, slightly turning her head, her gaze sweeping over her eyes. In contrast, Lu Sik-hen clearly saw a flicker of surprise in Qin Yan's eyes the moment they first met his gaze. But that surprise quickly vanished like a drop of water sinking into a deep pond. It disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a calm and indifferent expression, even tinged with a faint, almost imperceptible trace of pity. This look completely infuriated Lu Sik-hen. As Qin Yan walked closer, ignoring William Chen and the others, his voice grew hoarse and trembled with suppressed anger. "So you really are here." The music seemed to soften slightly, and the surrounding conversations quieted down. Many curious eyes gathered around. Qin Yan looked at him without saying a word, only gently withdrawing her hand from William Chen's arm. This subtle gesture carried a clear meaning of drawing a line. William Chen took half a step forward, positioning himself protectively in front of Qin Yan, his face still maintaining a polite smile, but his eyes held a scrutinizing gaze. "Sir, may I ask who you are?" "Who am I?" Lu Sik-hen sneered, pointing at Qin Yan, his voice unconsciously rising. "Ask her. Ask this woman who embezzled her husband's assets and fled with the money. Who am I?" "Embezzlement, fleeing." William Chen adjusted his glasses, his tone calm yet carrying an undeniable authority. "Sir, please watch your words. Ms. Qin Yan is my important business partner. All her financial and legal actions have undergone strict compliance reviews. If you have any accusations, please present evidence or resolve them through legal channels. Making baseless slander here is not a wise move." "Business partner?" Lu Sik-hen laughed as if he had heard the biggest joke in the world. He stared intently at Qin Yan. "Qin Yan, you really have some skills. It hasn't been long, and you've already latched onto a new backer. Do you think hiding here and finding a backer will let you escape justice? I'm telling you, dream on. Come back with me immediately. Drop the lawsuit you filed and return the money you owe. Otherwise what?" Qin Yan finally spoke. Her voice was clear and calm, spoken in standard Mandarin, yet carrying a sense of detachment and composure that Lu Sik-hen had never heard before. Lu Siken, this is not your Morningstar group, nor is it the home where you can order people around. Go back with you. Go back where? To the house I legally sold, which now belongs to someone else. Or to that apartment of yours where Xu Yangran has to cover the management fees. With every word she spoke, Lu Sichen's expression grew uglier, low murmurs spread around them. And many people began to understand the situation, their gazes toward Lu Siken growing complicated. As for dropping the lawsuit and returning the money, Qin Yan continued, her tone even tinged with a faint trace of mockery, that is a matter for the court and the law to decide. If you have objections to the judgment or its enforcement, contact your lawyer. Don't chase me across borders like this, slandering and threatening your ex-wife without any basis in a public setting. This only makes me more grateful for how right my decision was to leave you back then. The words ex-wife, spoken so clearly and calmly in front of everyone, felt like two sharp slaps across Lu Sichen's face. Lu Siken trembled with rage. He suddenly reached out to grab Qin Yan's arm. Qin Yan, don't you dare disrespect me. His hand was firmly intercepted mid-air by William Chen, whose smile had vanished, replaced by a sharp gaze. Mr. Lu, please restrain yourself, otherwise I will have no choice but to ask security to escort you out. Almost simultaneously, two tall hotel security guards in uniform quickly approached. Lu Siken looked at Qin Yan's expressionless face, at William Chen's protective stance, and at the surrounding gazes, some curious, some disdainful, some simply watching the show. A tremendous sense of humiliation and loss of control finally overwhelmed him completely. All his schemes, all his rage, in that moment, turned into a ridiculous one-man show. He violently shook off William Chen's hand, pointed at Qin Yan, and, due to extreme anger and embarrassment, his voice was pressed very low, yet carried a viper-like meaning. Fine, Qin Yan, you're really something, you think you've won, we'll see. After saying that, he didn't look at anyone else, turned sharply, and under the varied gazes of the crowd, he almost stumbled but forced himself to straighten his back and rushed out of the banquet hall. Behind him, William Chen's gentle yet firm voice could faintly be heard explaining to the surrounding people, a minor personal misunderstanding has disturbed everyone's enjoyment. My apologies, along with Qin Yan's calm, fluent English as she continued conversing with a foreign guest. That voice was like an ice pick, piercing through the last shred of dignity Lu Siken was desperately clinging to. The corridor outside the banquet hall was empty and quiet. A stark contrast to the opulence inside, Lu Siken leaned against the cold wall, gasping for breath. Beneath his expensive suit, his heart was pounding wildly, and his palms were sweaty. Not only had he failed to take Qin Yan away or salvage the situation, but he had also completely lost face in front of her and her new backer, and in front of so many prominent people. It solidified his image as the unreasonable, failed ex-husband. An unprecedented rage mixed with despair crashed through his chest. Qin Yan, William Chen, he would absolutely not let this go. I thought Lu Sichen's humiliating retreat from the banquet would quiet him down for a while, at least make him understand that persistent pestering and public outbursts solve nothing and only make him look worse. Clearly, I overestimated his rationality, or underestimated the persistence of the Lu mother-son duo and their deep-seated, arrogant belief that I must be under their control. On the third day after Lu Siken returned to the country, I was in a corner of the small-town library looking up information on local small-scale agricultural investments, preparing for a potential future homestay or eco-project. My phone vibrated softly on the table. It was a message from William. Just one sentence. Your ex-husband's mother, Ms. Lu Milan, entered the country yesterday afternoon and is staying at the Oak Hotel in the city. Do you need me to arrange for someone to keep an eye out? I stared at the message for a few seconds, suddenly feeling somewhat amused. Lu Siken himself had gotten a bloody nose, so now he was bringing out his mother to continue applying pressure. It seemed he really had no other tricks left. I replied, no need for special arrangements, thank you, he'll probably come find me. Sure enough, the next morning, just as I had returned to the cabin from the market with groceries and hadn't yet put down the things in my hands, I heard the sound of a car engine outside the yard. The engine stopped, followed by a slightly harsh screech of brakes. Through the gaps in the fence, I saw a rather conspicuous luxury taxi come to a halt. Lou Mylan stepped out of the car, dressed in a rose-red suit and carrying a crocodile skin handbag. She wore sunglasses that covered half her face. But her tightly pursed lips and the tense lines of her jaw clearly conveyed her anger and hostility. The driver helped her unload a fairly large suitcase. She paid the fare, the taxi drove off, and she stood rigidly outside my yard gate, like an angry fighting cock ready to enter the fray. Calmly, I opened the yard gate. Still holding the wicker basket filled with fresh tomatoes and a baguette, Chin Nyan, Lou Mylan yanked off her sunglasses. Revealing eyes reddened from the long flight and fury, her gaze swept over my simple linen shirt and trousers like a knife, finally landing on the tidy, cozy, and obviously not luxurious cabin behind me. She let out an undisguised snort. "You live in this kind of dump, Ms. Lou. You've flown all this way just to comment on my residence." I made no move to let her in, standing at the doorway with a flat tone. "Is there something you need? Is there something I need?" Lou Mylan seemed ignited by my attitude, her voice suddenly sharpening. "You've harmed my son like that, turned our family upside down, and you're asking me if there's something I need. Chin Nyan, has your conscience been eaten by dogs? What has the Lou family ever done to wrong you? We fed you, clothed you, let you live the life of a young mistress for 5 years. And this is how you repay us, selling the house, divorcing, and even suing Seeching, freezing his money. Do you have any humanity left? Here we go again. I could almost recite this by now." I cut off her torrent of words. "Ms. Lou, first of all, during those 5 years, I played the role of your son's lawful wife, handling household matters, maintaining necessary social engagements, and even assisting him with some work-related trivialities. I was not a caged canary. Secondly, the divorce and property division were based on law and facts. Lastly, if you came here today just to repeat these unoriginal accusations, then I'm afraid I can't entertain you any longer. I still need to prepare lunch." As I spoke, I made a move to close the door. "Stop right there." Lou Mylan abruptly reached out to block the door, her chest heaving with anger. "Do you think running abroad solves everything? Let me tell you, no way. I came here today to demand an explanation from you. Withdraw the lawsuit immediately, return Seeching's money, and also, go make things clear with that so-called William. Tell him to stop pestering Seeching, or else what?" I looked at him and suddenly felt a bit weary, not physically, but tired of this meaningless entanglement. "Otherwise, would you want to ruin my reputation, or make things difficult for my family, Ms. Lou?" The same threats, repeated too often, lose their effect. My parents are in Northern Europe watching the aurora, having a great time. As for me, as you can see, I'm doing just fine in this rundown place. No need for your concern." Lou Mylan was left speechless, her face flushing even redder. She seemed not to have expected me to be so unyielding. Even her usual threat of involving my family had failed. He took a deep breath, as if making some kind of decision, and pulled a bulging file folder from his handbag, slapping it onto the fence post with a sharp sound. "Don't get too cocky too soon. Take a look at these. These are all the evidence of your dishonesty back when you were with the Lou family." His voice carried a desperate, all-or-nothing intensity. "Look at this, the money you secretly transferred from the family account to your poor younger brother. And this, the antique ornament you took from my collection room without permission to give away. And these are the text message records of your past interactions with some unsavory men. I've kept them all." I raised an eyebrow. I glanced at the file folder but didn't reach for it. Transferring money to my brother was a normal transaction from my pre-marriage savings and part of my post-marriage part-time income to support his education. Every transaction is documented and traceable. The antique ornament was something Lou Mylan herself broke and asked me to have repaired. I still have the repair receipt. As for the unsavory men's text messages, they were likely normal work-related exchanges or greetings from classmates. In Lou Mylan's eyes, any man probably counts as unsavory. "Ms. Lou," I sighed, genuinely feeling pity and sorrow for her. "You came all this way just to bring these so-called pieces of evidence. You've really gone to great lengths to frame me. But you might need to update your investigation methods or hire a more reliable detective. For every single thing you mentioned, I have a complete chain of evidence to refute it. Would you like me to contact my lawyer right now to go through each point with you? By the way, Let me remind you that making false accusations and defaming someone overseas could have more serious consequences than you imagine, especially when the other party has a highly professional legal team. I mentioned lawyer Chen and William. Lu Meilan's face visibly paled. She had probably heard from Lu Sikhen about Chen Chiming's prowess and witnessed William Chen's commanding presence at the banquet. But she refused to admit defeat, shouting with a bluster that betrayed her fear, You can't scare me, I'm your elder. What kind of attitude is this, elder?" I chuckled softly, though the smile was cold. "You used to be, but now we have no relationship whatsoever. To me, you're just an uninvited stranger trying to threaten me with fabricated evidence. Ms. Lu, if you don't have anything more constructive to say, please leave and stop disturbing my life. Qin Yan, don't go too far." Lu Meilan trembled with anger, pointing her finger at my nose. "I'm telling you, Sikhen won't let you off. He'll drag you back for sure. And Yangran is pregnant with Sichen's child. It's the Lu family's heir. What right does a barren woman like you have to act so arrogant here? When Yangran gives birth to a son, you'll be nothing. The money you obtained through despicable means will have to be returned sooner or later. Here we go again, always the same old tune, children, grandchildren. Inheritance rights, as if a woman's entire worth is tied to this." I looked at her face, twisted with agitation, and suddenly felt that even the last bit of interest in arguing had vanished. I turned and walked back into the house, then quickly came out again, holding a very small, sealed transparent document bag. Inside was only a thin piece of paper and a small black USB drive. I placed the document bag next to the bulging one he had just slapped down. "Ms. Lu. Consider this a return gift for your long journey," I said calmly. "On the paper is a summary of the large gifts your son, Lu Sikhen, has made to at least 3 different women over the past 3 years through offshore companies, including but not limited to Miss Xu Yangran. Although it's just a summary, the amounts and flow are clear enough. The USB drive contains backups of some bank statement screenshots and intimate photos. Of course, the key information has been redacted. But it's enough for identification." Lu Meilan recoiled as if burned, staring at the small document bag in shock and suspicion, then at me. "I never intended to show these things to anyone," I continued, my tone devoid of any emotion, "but since you came to me with evidence today, I thought perhaps you also have the right to understand a more authentic side of your son. You can choose to believe that your son was merely momentarily confused, seduced by women outside. But as someone who has observed him up close, I tend to think this is more like a habit and a set of values of his. Miss Xu Yangran might not be the first, and she likely won't be the last." I paused, watching his face suddenly lose color. "As for the status of Miss Xu and her future child that you just mentioned, I think you should perhaps worry first about whether your son still has sufficient financial means to support his growing number of families and descendants. After all, when you rob Peter to pay Paul, there will come a time when there's not enough to go around. Take care, I won't see you out." With that, I stopped looking at him, picked up the vegetable basket from the ground, turned, and walked into the yard. I closed the wooden gate and gently locked it. Outside, there was a deathly silence. After a while, I heard the sound of suitcase wheels dragging away, somewhat unsteady, somewhat panicked, gradually fading into the distance. I didn't go to the window to look. I knew Lu Meilan had left with her ridiculous evidence, her son's disgraceful summary, and a heart full of humiliation and panic. He wouldn't come to settle scores with me again, at least not in this way. I walked to the kitchen, washed the tomatoes, and began preparing a simple lunch. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm and bright, spilling onto the countertop. Outside the window, by the fence, lay the bulging document bag and, next to it, the small, untouched transparent bag. They stood like 2 silent outposts, marking the end of a farcical drama. After Lu Sikhen returned to China, his days could hardly be described as anything less than a living hell. His mother, Lu Meilan, had come back from abroad, but she seemed like a person who had lost her backbone. No longer did she sharply curse Qin Yan as she used to. Instead, she became somewhat neurotic, frequently pulling Lu Sikhen aside to interrogate him. "Sikhen, tell Mom the truth. Besides Xu Yangran, are there any other women? Where did all that money go? Who did you give it to? Are you hiding many more things from me?" Each time, Lu Sikhen grew increasingly irritable, He knew his mother must have learned something from Qin Yan. That summary was like a thorn lodged in Lu Meilan's heart, filling her with unprecedented doubt and disappointment toward the son she had always been so proud of. A rift had emerged in the trust between mother and son. While the company's situation took a sharp turn for the worse, Wansheng Group ultimately sent an official letter, citing strategic realignment as the reason for terminating the Blue Ocean Plan collaboration. The immense effort and resources invested in the early stages were almost entirely wasted. As for the crucial overseas syndicated loan, despite submitting additional materials, the bank postponed the disbursement indefinitely, citing risk control concerns. Several key clients, catching wind of the situation, began to hesitate and even shifted some of their orders to competitors. The most fatal blow came from within. Several longtime shareholders who had long resented Lu Xichen's domineering style and coveted greater power joined forces with some small and medium shareholders frightened by the recent turmoil. At an extraordinary general meeting, they suddenly launched an attack. They accused Lu Xichen of causing major legal disputes and a financial crisis due to his personal indiscretions, severely damaging the company's reputation and interests. They questioned his ability and qualifications to continue leading the company and demanded he temporarily step down from his position as president to undergo scrutiny by a special investigation committee. Although Lu Xichen, relying on his remaining authority and supporters, barely managed to suppress the immediate proposal for his removal, the motion to establish a special investigation committee was passed. This meant his every move, especially concerning fund allocation and major decisions, would be constrained and monitored. His era of unchallenged authority at Morningstar Group was over. When the wall starts to crumble, everyone gives it a push. Executives and partners who once fawned over him now either avoided him or spoke to him with difficulty. Even his chief secretary submitted her resignation, citing family reasons. Lu Xichen locked himself in his office. The ashtray was filled with cigarette butts. His expensive suit hung wrinkled on his frame. The red veins in his eyes and the stubble on his chin made him look 10 years older. He felt the chilling cold of betrayal by all and the helplessness of a great edifice about to collapse. However, the straw that broke the camel's back came from what he thought was his safest rear, Xu Yangran. Xu Yanran's days were equally difficult. The court investigation was closing in step by step. Those overseas accounts Lu Xichen had initially set up for her were now under intense scrutiny. With funds only allowed in, not out, Lu Xichen, struggling to protect himself, could give her less and less money. Even the previously promised high monthly living expenses began to be delayed. The new jewelry she coveted, the membership renewal for the top-tier beauty salon all became unattainable luxuries. What terrified her even more was Lu Meilan's drastic change in attitude towards her. Before, although not particularly fond of her, Lu Meilan had been relatively polite for the sake of the golden grandson in her belly. Now, the look in Lu Meilan's eyes was full of and a hint of disgust. She even once asked her directly, "Is the hospital where you get your prenatal checkups reliable? When will you go for a more detailed examination? I know an old Chinese medicine doctor who is excellent at reading a pregnant woman's pulse." Xu Yangran was not foolish. She heard the implied meaning. The Lu family was beginning to doubt the authenticity of the child in her womb. Was it because of those summaries Qin Yan provided, or was it because Lu Xichen was now down on his luck? They wanted to her this burden. Fear and immense resentment consumed her. She could not lose this child. It was her only bargaining chip at the moment, but she also could not sit idly by, waiting to be thrown out by the Lu family and pursued for money she might not be able to keep. Anxiety and greed drove her to irrational actions. First, she secretly sold several pieces of valuable jewelry Lu Xichen had given her early on, converting them into cash to hold in her hand. Then, she began to demand money from Lu Xichen more frequently and with greater justification. Her reasons expanded from nutrition fees and prenatal checkup costs to demanding advance payment for the baby's future education fund and insurance premiums. With the amounts growing larger each time, Lu Xichen was overwhelmed by company affairs. Every call from Xu Yangran asking for money was torture. He began to, even avoiding her calls, that afternoon. Xu Yangran stormed straight into the Morningstar Group building. With her noticeably pregnant belly, she ignored the receptionist and security guards. crying and shouting as she forced her way into the conference room where Lu Sikhen was holding an emergency meeting with senior executives. Lu Sikhen, you have to give me money today. Xu Yanran's hair was disheveled, her eyes red and swollen as she pointed at Lu Sikhen, her voice shrill. Are you trying to abandon me and the child? Let me tell you, no way, this child is yours, and you can't deny it. Transfer 2 million to me right now, or else I'll go to the media and expose all the scandals of your Lu family. I'll let everyone see what kind of person the CEO of Morningstar Group really is, a hypocrite who seduces and then abandons. The conference room fell dead silent. All the senior executives stared dumbfounded at the spectacle, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. Lu Sichen's face instantly flushed a deep purple, veins bulging on his forehead. Overwhelmed by unprecedented shame and rage, he abruptly stood up. Xu Yangran, get out of here. Security, drag her out. I'm not leaving. If you don't give me the money today, I'll die right here. Xu Yangran screamed hysterically and actually lunged toward the corner of a nearby table. Quick-eyed security guards grabbed her just in time. The scene descended into chaos. Eventually, Xu Yangran was forcibly removed. But her threats to expose the scandal and her shrewish behavior had already spread rapidly throughout the company via the attending executives and were even beginning to leak to the outside world. Lu Sikhen slumped back into his chair, feeling the last shred of his dignity had been utterly crushed. Just then, his private phone buzzed. He received a multimedia message from an unknown number. He didn't want to look, but as if guided by some unseen force, he opened it. It was a photo. The resolution wasn't very high, as if taken secretly. The background was a dimly lit bar booth. Xu Yangran was nestled in the arms of a man wearing a baseball cap, his face mostly obscured. The man's hand seemed to be resting on her abdomen. The photo's timestamp watermark showed it was taken about 5 months ago, right around the time Xu Yangran had told him she was pregnant. Immediately, another message came in, containing just one line: Mr. Lu, you should investigate properly. Miss Xu has more than one good brother. A friendly tip. Dr. Liu from the obstetrics and gynecology department might know some interesting things. Lu Sichen's mind went blank with a roaring sound. He stared fixedly at the photo, at the blurry outline of the man, at the smile on Xu Yanran's face, a smile he had never seen before, one filled with fawning and dependence. 5 months ago, around the time of the pregnancy, Dr. Liu from once the seed of doubt was planted. It instantly grew into a towering tree, its branches and vines tightly coiling around his heart, bringing suffocating pain and icy coldness. Could it be that the child in Xu Yanran's belly wasn't his? This thought slithered into his mind like a venomous snake, making his whole body turn cold and his stomach churn. He suddenly remembered that when Xu Yangran first got together with him, she seemed to have had an ex-boyfriend she couldn't completely break free from. Though they later appeared to have cut ties, and the news of her pregnancy had come so conveniently, just when his mother was pressuring him the most and he was growing increasingly impatient with Qin Yan. No, it's impossible. He forced himself to stay calm, but his trembling hands betrayed the storm raging within him. If the child truly wasn't his, then everything he had done to Qin Yan, the price he had paid, all that he had lost, wouldn't it all be a complete, utterly absurd joke? President Lu, are you all right? A senior executive beside him, seeing his ashen face and unsteady stance, asked cautiously. Lu Sikhen did not answer. He pushed back his chair, stumbled out of the conference room, leaving behind a room full of subordinates exchanging bewildered and speculative glances. He needed to investigate that Dr. Liu immediately. He needed to check Xu Yanran's whereabouts over the past few months, to check everything. If this were true, he dared not imagine. Meanwhile, Qin Yan, thousands of miles away, was listening to Lawyer Chen's concise report via encrypted communication. The photos and hints had been anonymously sent to Lu Sikhen. Miss Xu Yangran had been frequently in contact with a man named Zhao Jun recently, suspected to be her ex-boyfriend, who had a prior record of fraud. Furthermore, regarding that Dr. Liu you previously asked me to monitor, his account received a substantial overseas transfer 4 months ago, linked to an alias used by Miss Xu Yangran. Qin Yan stood under the sunset by the sea, gazing at the sparkling water, his tone calm and unruffled. Understood. Let them tear each other apart from now on. Dog bites dog, both end up with a mouthful of fur. He was almost losing interest in watching the spectacle. He just wondered what expression Lu Sik-hen would wear when he confirmed that the eldest son he had so eagerly awaited might share no blood relation with him at all. That would probably be the final, and most spectacular, scene before his complete collapse. The sea breeze, carrying a salty dampness, swept across the terrace, dispersing the slight heat emanating from the laptop's vents. I had just finished a video conference with William, finalizing a preliminary intent to participate in one of his sustainable tourism funds in Southeast Asia. The investment amount wasn't large, but I liked the prospects and the philosophy. More importantly, it signified that I was beginning to truly use money I had earned myself, or rather, legally reclaimed money that rightfully belonged to me, to plan and build a future for Qin Yan, a future that was not an appendage to anyone. The sunset dyed the sea a warm gold, a few seagulls glided by, emitting clear cries. The basil and mint I planted in the small courtyard were thriving, emitting a fresh fragrance. Mrs. Brown from next door brought over a basket of her homemade apple pie, warmly inviting me to her grandson's birthday barbecue party over the weekend. I smiled and agreed, reciprocating with a jar of my own preserved lemon honey. Life moved forward at its simple, warm pace. My phone screen lit up. It was an encrypted brief from Lawyer Chen, just a few lines, yet packed with significant information. Lu Sichen's side had confirmed initiating paternity testing procedures. Samples had been sent for analysis. The preliminary report from the Chunqing Group's Special Investigation Committee was out, identifying decision-making errors and improper fund transfers in multiple projects, recommending that the shareholders' meeting hold him accountable for management responsibilities. One of Xu Yanran's overseas properties had been temporarily sealed by a local court, pending further rulings. Mrs. Lu Milan had been hospitalized due to hypertension triggered by emotional distress, but was currently in stable condition. I glanced at it, didn't reply, and silently deleted the message. It was all expected, even progressing a bit faster than I had imagined. Once the venomous fang of suspicion is planted, with Lu Sichen's paranoid nature and current predicament, he would undoubtedly spare no effort to verify it, and the truth is often the cruelest bone-scraping blade. A few days later, Zhu Yuran couldn't contain her excitement. Late at night for me, but daytime for her. She called me from Yeyang, her voice hushed yet brimming with the thrill of having stumbled upon a shocking piece of gossip. Nyan Nyan, it's exploded. It really has. Lu Sik-hen and Xu Yangran have completely torn into each other. I poured myself a cup of herbal tea, walked to the rocking chair on the balcony, and sat down. Take it slow, Zhu Yuran. The paternity test results are out. Her words tumbled out rapidly. Excluded as the biological father. It's not Lu Sichen's child. My God, I heard that when the report reached Lu Sik-hen, he trashed his office on the spot. Then he stormed straight to the hospital, grabbed Xu Yangran, who was still hospitalized for recovery in front of many doctors and nurses, threw the report in her face, and demanded to know who the bastard's father was. I could picture the scene. Lu Sichen's pride and need for control, already fragile from successive blows, had undoubtedly been shattered by this final straw of betrayal, enough to drive him utterly mad. What about Xu Yangran? Did she admit it? She did, eventually. At first, she cried and tried to deny it, claiming the test was faulty, that someone was framing her. Zhu Yuran scoffed. But Lu Sik-hen somehow got hold of more photos of her with that ex-boyfriend, Zhao Jun, and bank transfer records. The timeline matched up perfectly. That's when Xu Yangran panicked. She changed her story, saying Zhao Jun had forced her, that she was a victim too. Anyway, she cried pitifully. But how could Lu Sik-hen possibly believe that? I heard he roared on the spot about suing her for fraud, demanding she return every penny. Hospital security had to intervene to separate them. Does Lu Milan know? How could she not? She's in the same hospital. I heard her blood pressure spiked again when she got the news. She wailed about this being a calamity, cursed Xu Yangran as a jinx, called Lu Sik-hen blind. Zhu Yuran paused, and then she cursed you for being heartless, for not lifting a finger to help. But no one's paying her any mind now. Lu Sik-hen has his own hands full. What about Morningstar Group? I asked. It's over. Complete chaos. Ju Yuran's tone was tinged with regret but held more satisfaction. The paternity scandal was leaked to the media by someone. Although no names were explicitly mentioned, headlines like CEO of a well-known listed company suspected of being defrauded by mistress, long-awaited child not his own, who wouldn't see through that. The stock price plummeted that day. It hit the limit down, coupled with the earlier report from the Special Investigation Committee. Several major shareholders jointly demanded Lu Sikhen immediately resign from all positions and face legal consequences. The board has held several emergency meetings. It said a motion for his removal is bound to pass sooner or later. His business empire is on the verge of changing hands. I listened in silence. That mountain I once had to look up to, that even felt suffocating, had long been hollowed out from within. It only needed a gentle push to come crashing down. And the one who pushed it over was his own arrogance, indifference, and series of wrong choices. By the way, Ju Yuran added, there's also that Zhao Jun, Xu Yanran's ex-boyfriend, who seems to have been arrested for another fraud case, inside, in order to get a reduced sentence. He spilled everything about how Xu Yangran seduced him, had him pretend to be her cousin to help stabilize Lu Sikhen, and even discussed how to use the child to extort more money. Now, Xu Yanran's charges of fraud and deception are probably unavoidable. The greedy are ultimately consumed by their own greed. Xu Yangran wanted to use a child to secure wealth and status, but she didn't realize she had long become an even fatter prey in someone else's eyes. Yuran, I said softly, you don't need to tell me these things specifically anymore. There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by Ju Yuran's understanding laughter. Got it, Nyen Nyen. This trash really isn't worth dirtying your ears. You just enjoy your sunshine and beaches over there. By the way, I have annual leave next month. How about I come visit you? You're welcome anytime, I said sincerely, smiling as I hung up the phone. The night was deep, the moon rising over the sea, its clear light spilling across the water, shimmering, tranquil and vast. I opened my email, handled a few work messages, and glanced at the next pottery course introduction from the local community college. I felt a bit tempted. Maybe I could give it a try. Before bed, I habitually checked that almost never used encrypted email account, which still held faint connections to the past. Inside, quietly sitting there, was an email with no subject and a sender listed as a string of garbled characters. I opened it. There was no text, only an attached photo. The photo wasn't high resolution, as if taken hastily at night. With dim lighting, the background vaguely showed the black wrought iron gate of the garden villa I had lived in for 5 years and later sold. A man was curled up on the front steps, head bowed, hands buried in disheveled hair, shoulders slumped, his back exuding a lifeless despair. A few empty liquor bottles were scattered around him. Even from just a blurry silhouette, I could recognize him as Lu Sikhen. The photo's timestamp showed it was taken early yesterday morning. He had sat there like that, outside someone else's home, before the ruins of what he once believed would forever be his kingdom, like a homeless wanderer. I looked quietly at this photo. My heart held no ripples, no pity, no satisfaction, just like looking at an irrelevant news image. He had completely collapsed. Career, family reputation, love, if he ever had any, and his pitiful self-respect had all turned to bubbles. And how much of this was the bitter fruit he himself had sown? I moved the mouse, the cursor hovering over the delete button. Without the slightest hesitation, I clicked lightly, a soft asterisk click asterisk, and the email along with that photo instantly vanished from the screen, as if they had never existed. I closed the laptop, walked to the window, pushed it open, and a cool sea breeze rushed in, dispersing the last trace of stuffiness in the room. In the distance, the lighthouse beams swept rhythmically across the ink-black sea, guiding night-sailing vessels. Most of the town's lights had already gone out, leaving only scattered warm glows dotting the peaceful night. My kingdom is not in the skyscrapers of bustling cities, not in the scheming depths of wealthy mansions, and not under the shelter of any man. It is here, in this small wooden cottage filled with the scent of flowers and plants, on this land of freedom beneath my feet, within my gradually clearer and firmer heart. Though not large, every inch of it completely belongs to me. Lu Sichen's collapse is the end of his story, but my story is just beginning. I closed the window, drew the curtains, and walked into the bedroom. The bed was soft, carrying the clean scent of sun-dried sheets. Tomorrow is another new day. The end.